Hello, and thank you for joining us for Accessing Education in the Time of Coronavirus. My name is Joanne, and I'm your technical producer. During the presentation, you may ask questions at any time by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. There's also a chat button you may use to communicate with presenters and attendees, similar to a discussion board. When sending a chat, you'll have the option to send to just presenters or presenters and attendees. Presenters will respond to questions in the Q&A box, so be sure to put your questions there. If you need assistance at any time, please use the Q&A box. Thank you, and now I'll turn it over to today's presenters to get us started.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. We're going to start with some quick introductions and then jump right in. So I am Alexandra Reed. I am a graduate student at George Mason University in their PhD program, and I'm focusing my research on inclusion and qualitative research and how to develop research which is inclusive and participatory for individuals with disabilities. I feel that there's not enough work being done in the research fields of special education and disability research that includes that primary stakeholder, the individual with a disability. I view them as the true expert. So that's a little bit about me. If you're looking at the slide, this is new for me, our welcome slide. I am the one in the top with the little toddler in matching pumpkin outfit, and she's 19 months, and I also have a 6-week-old who may or may not be coming in to join us. We're hoping she sticks to the plan of give mama time for this presentation. So Grace, why don't we hear from you?
Sure, and Sasha, I'm not seeing the slide, so you may need to work on.
I will.
It was Talia. Talia came in and did some sabotage. So hi, I'm Grace Francis. I'm an assistant professor at George Mason University, and I work closely with everyone here on this panel. So my interest, I'm a family member of individuals with disabilities, and my real interest is on family professional partnerships and quality of life outcomes after school. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here today. I guess I can hand it off. Alex, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. I am a doctoral student, and I am currently focusing my research topic on belonging and what that means for students with disabilities or just people with disabilities in general, and if they feel that sense of belonging in any given space. I am also a new mom, so I have a 12-week-old in the other room. I'm hoping that he as well stays in the other room. Looking forward to being here today. Thanks.
And I will be last but not least. I am Dr. Marcy Kinestrom. I am an associate professor of special education at George Mason. I am the coordinator of our low incidence, which we call Virginia Adapted Curriculum special education licensure program. I also an aside of an assistive technology, which is my interest in, so working with kids with severe disabilities in technology. I am the old one in the picture with the oldest kids. That is me.
Great. Let me get to the next slide. So that's a little bit about us. We'd love to just quickly gauge the room and see who is joining us today, who's kind of in our Zoom room. Just to see who we're going to get to talk to and have some conversations with. So really quickly, just pop in the chat and we'll have Marcy, if you don't mind just checking. If you are a teacher or administrator, school-based staff, give us a 1, family member, parent, a 2, student, grad student, high school student, 3, self-advocate, 4, and if there's another, I'm sure there's other categories I didn't hit, just hit that with a 5 and we'll let you guys answer.
Looks like we have a good mix. I see a few 5s and some 1s.
That's what I was hoping for at TASH. So
Yeah, some 2s and 3s. Oh, they're putting lots of letters in. Lots of 5s,
okay.
which is
And then
awesome.
next, and some of you probably jump to the next one. So topic of mind on everyone's mind is COVID-19, this health pandemic. How has that really impacted your work and or school, or both? A through D, A not at all the way to D totally impacted.
Seeing lots of C's and D's. Most responses are C's and D's here in this group.
Great. Not great that you were totally impacted, but great that we have an audience who hopefully some of this work will resonate with. All right, so I'm going to let Marcy share a little bit about the background of our study and conception, and Grace, feel free to jump in since you were with us from the start.
Sure. So, one of the obvious things, why are we doing this? Because it is just such an historic event. It is something like we've never experienced before, and we really wanted to be able to kind of capture what was happening. We focused specifically on this group, our kids with significant disabilities, because while everybody, is dealing with this pandemic in some way, it affects them. We feel that it affects this group uniquely, and the teachers who are working with them. So the idea that our kids with significant disabilities require such extensive and personalized supports, that they have usually are taught very with a physical approach, meaning using hands-on materials, working directly with them. They have sensory needs, they're medically vulnerable, and they are in need of a lot of services. There's a lot of collaboration and coordination. So not just the teacher, but the speech language pathologist, the physical therapist, the assistive technology, the tools they use. When this first started and schools closed, at least schools in our area, all of that stuff and all of those people, the stuff got locked in the schools and the people were not available to the students. So we really wanted to capture what was happening with this unique population and how coronavirus has affected them specifically. In terms of the how, we used our personal connections, those teachers we knew within our circles. So maybe colleagues of ours, some who have been teaching, and us as professors, because we really wanted to use students, teachers who we had a relationship with, so they knew that they could communicate with us in a safe environment, in a trusted environment, and feel that ability to really tell us what was going on. And they really did share with us some of the struggles that they were having while they were going through this process, and that we did it over time to kind of capture the ever-changing aspect of what's been happening with coronavirus and with our students in school. Anybody else?
Thank you. So like Marcy said, we took a phenomenological approach to this research, and quite frankly, we are still in the middle of analysis. It's really, really exciting that it has taken off to the extent that it has. While some of what we're hearing isn't happy, it's just fascinating just to see this process of what has emerged from March till now, and what we probably anticipate still hearing from and collecting some more data into January, into 2021, because every day something changes. A little bit of context before we share what our preliminary results are right now. We had four rounds of interviews, and interviews 1 and 2 took place in March through June. So the teachers that we were speaking with were 100% online at that time, based on their local county mandates. And round 3 was a summer August check-in or beginning of the school year check-in. And the most recent interviews that we're going to share with you, some of the teachers were hybrid, some of the teachers were preparing to become hybrid, and some were online and still uncertain what was happening next. So there really is, we are getting people at totally different data points in their career during this pandemic, it's really exciting. The 4 teachers that we have the most robust data, because we have complete interviews 1 through 4, are who we are sharing data with you today about. However, we have upwards of 20 participants that we're following, which is really exciting. So the 5 major themes that we'll go into, which probably won't be surprising to those of you tuning in today: parent-teacher interaction, as well as family-teacher interaction, overwhelmed and uncertainties, the issue of equity, breaking rules, teachers breaking rules to get what they need to get done, and lessons learned from teachers, which could honestly be its own study, standalone. Just some of the major successes and highlights, and some challenges. I do want to just share a quick note on technology, and team, jump in, feel free afterwards. Since the classrooms have transitioned online essentially 100%, technology is really was woven throughout all of these themes. And it'll be interesting to see when we write this up and continue with schools making new decisions right now where technology lands in terms of analysis. But I just wanted to give a little caveat that it's not being ignored. It really is woven throughout. Does anyone else want to add? All right, Alex, why don't you share with us a little bit about this theme?
Great, thank you, Sasha. Just a little bit of background about myself. I taught for 8 years, and I'm sure you know that everybody on our panel has been a teacher. So this study has been very personal to myself because I'm recently out of the classroom. And it really was difficult to sit through some of these interviews and listen to the challenges and uncertainties and how overwhelmed teachers truly are during the days that they face. So for our theme of overwhelmed and uncertain, there was a lot of inconsistent messaging, whether it was from central office or from their building principals. And that, I think, was very difficult for our teachers to operate under. Just the lack of instructions was incredibly frustrating because they were looking for some certainty, and they really didn't have that certainty from anyone in the building. As you all know, being uncertain is the new norm. Every day is different. We are all kind of just operating in what happens on that day. And I think as a teacher, we thrive on consistency, and we really want to make sure that we're planning accordingly. And that was really difficult for our teachers. Some teachers talked about how they had the inability to settle because it was constantly changing. So if they were, able to, if they ask central office a question, one day they may receive an answer, and then the next day they may be like, oh, no, we're not doing that anymore. So I think that was difficult for the teachers. From one of our participants, they just talked about how they started on October 6th, and in exactly 1 month from October 6th, they changed their schedule. So they started virtually, then they decided to come back in person, and then they went back to virtual learning. So just prepping and planning to teach students was really difficult, which caused a lot of anxious teachers, and it was just worrisome just getting all the work done. They didn't really have many choices when they did return to school. They either had to return and hope that their school provided PPE and that the students were able to social distance as well as the faculty, or the only other option was to resign.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. All right, one overwhelmingly clear area discussed with our teachers was this concept of parent-teacher interaction. Obviously, being teachers of students with significant support needs, there is hopefully a lot of parent-teacher interaction going on, but especially as we follow this group from March till now, it's clear these interactions are very dynamic and growing and changing. The majority of feedback we received in March through June, towards the end of the school year, really seemed to position the teachers against the parents, really an us versus them. And again, that is something that is often felt within special education between teachers and families, and it was just exacerbated when you take away the classroom and take away the school setting and really expect the parent to step in as a service provider. Parents were one story that we heard from multiple teachers was trainings provided to the teachers about distance learning instruction was really how to coach the parent in ABA training. And the friction that caused between a parent who is trying to get their kid online and learning and engaged, and then is being taught how to give commands and praise and reinforcement to their student, which is not something a parent signs up for when they think they're sending their kid off to school, right? Another huge area of tension among interactions was teachers felt a lot judged. They felt that they were being watched because in essence, a lot of the times they were. A parent or a family member needed to sit next to the student in order to access the curriculum and access that instruction. And so whether or not there was judgment, that feeling of somebody watching really weighed heavily on our teachers. And falling short of expectations was a common refrain, whether that was the expectations set by the families or set by the school, the counties and the school's central office. Teachers really felt that they were falling short, or that the families perceived that they were falling short. And we started to see a shift currently in the fall interviews, and that there really was an increase or a kind of figuring it out together, the respect and the trust between teachers and parents. I should say parents and teachers who had returned to the same setup. So if you went back to the same teacher that you had in May and June, expectations began to level out. And I think what really we saw was that parents and teachers kind of settled down together, because central office is not helping anyone settle down. They're changing their rules and regulations every 2 to 3 weeks. So it was really up to the parents and the teacher interactions and relationships to kind of settle down and implement what is best for those students in the classrooms. The next major one, again, probably won't come as a surprise, but was certainly exacerbated during this distance learning, is the issue of equity. We really saw the inequities exposed and emphasized, whether it was basic needs being met. When you're worried about safety and food security, accessing online instruction is not top of mind, whether you're that student's teacher or you're the family of that student. Language, whether that was a language spoken or just the communication patterns. When you go completely online, that's a lot different than coming into an in-person IEP or coming into in-person meetings and instruction. Family support, again, that assumption that all students have a level of family support that can help them log in, often needing to navigate to 2 to 3 to 4 tabs just to get to the online video platform. And community. A lot of students with significant disabilities don't have or weren't invited to the learning pods. And teachers, the stories about teachers watching their students kind of struggle alone and at home when they know that there's so many general ed students who just popped into a pod and it was just like school, it was heartbreaking and very, very exposed. And of course, the technology, the level of technological prowess that you need just to be able to log on is often overlooked for our population. And a lot of the teachers that we spoke to, their number one thing, if they could go back in time, would be teach technology. And so that's one of their number one goals for the future too, which is really exciting to see the silver lining coming out of moving forward. I don't know, Frankie, do you want to touch anything else on equity?
Sure. Just really quickly too, I want to preface that these teachers were not all from one school or even from one district. It's one part of a state, but I don't remember exactly how many schools, but multiple ages, across grade levels, across classrooms, across school districts, let alone school systems. And we're hearing the same thing across all of these teachers with varying levels of support needs among their children, but also professional experience. But with the equity that it was really exposed and emphasized is also ran hand in hand with parent trust and participation, because as parents, it was almost like a forced situation for better, not for worse, that there was so much uncertainty still that parents and family members and students really had to create their own centralized, safety from the chaos. And technology, all of these assumptions that even the teachers had made about their students or their students' home life were really challenged. And the teachers discussed being like more reflexive and more understanding, and really understanding where families were coming from, and really understanding not only that families experienced like more disparate situations, but really empathizing and understanding and finding solutions to really partner with families, as opposed to, this might be going on, really now understanding as a direct result of being welcomed into the family home every single day of the school week.
Thank you. Our next kind of theme, and one that we probably are more excited about sharing, was just this concept of really going rogue, and the teachers not only going above and beyond, but breaking rules to do whatever they needed to kind of make it work for their students or for their classroom. There was a lot of restrictions, and for good reason, placed on, what platforms can you use, which communication devices can you use, what do you log into for, student data, and all of those sorts of things. But that does put a lot of barriers to being able to get to your students. So some of our teachers of older students, or of students who do access the cell phone, were able to use FaceTime or GroupMe, or something 101, another app where you can kind of communicate with your students that's not just logging into like Google Classroom, for example. Physically taking the trip to drive supplies to drop off at the end of a driveway, or at the curb for the students, going back into the classroom and getting, those primary reinforcers, the coveted piece of technology that was the favorite, those sorts of things, and certainly working outside of the job description. A lot of our teachers shared, and I know Marcy will share with us in the next slide, but they've worked harder than they've ever worked in their lives. And teachers that are on here, I'm sure you're nodding, and I hope families that are on here, you are seeing that too with the teachers that you have for your students, really going beyond the 8 to 4, 8 to 5 hours, and figuring out how to fit that virtual world in, how to fit your classroom into the virtual world. That's a participant direct quote that we just wanted to give. I wanted to make sure I included her initials to give her some credit. So this is one of the more exciting ones, because they're faced with so many challenges, but a lot of those challenges and a lot of that inconsistent messaging came with a lot of autonomy. So teachers were able to see what they needed to do, and individualize it, even more so than sometimes when they're in the four-walled classroom, which has been exciting to see.
I have a story that Sasha and I heard from one of our participants that we thought was really interesting. She had a grant for community outings that was, I think, like $3,000 that she wrote independently for the school district. And without getting permission, she went ahead and spent the grant money on getting supplies for students prior to even talking to central office. And she was like, well, my students need what they need. If we can't go into the community for learning, I'm going to buy them every supply that they can possibly use at home. So she was clearly she's in teaching for the right reasons, and she wanted to do everything to help her students out, which was really cool.
All right, and lastly, some lessons from our teachers. Marcy, I'll let you.
And while I'm doing that, if one of my co-presenters will look, there's some Q&As coming in and my poor eyes can't see that from here. Thanks, Ranky. Okay, so some lessons for our teachers. There were so many things that we could kind of do as a category. And so my unofficial category is our teachers are bonkers. Like that's the word I've been using all semester long to the deans, to everybody as I describe what's been happening for our teachers. So there are a lot of challenges, but there are also a lot of successes and some kind of silver lining things that we kind of wanted to point out to you. One of the things too that we've been sharing some of these stories that teachers said, having gone through this process, they have become, they recognize that they have become better planners, right? That they have had to plan so much. A lot of times, maybe they did something on the fly or last minute. This format pushes them into having to be more organized, and they are finding that that is something they're going to carry forward with them. There have been, we talked about some of the kind of the challenges. All the teachers said that they're the central administration, so whatever that is for the school or school district, or their supervisors, they found a lot of challenges trying to get help and information in the back and forth, but that they all emphasize their own team, their teacher team, or some immediate team of them, their paraprofessionals, their related service, and they have really bonded in terms of teams and figured out, again, with these breaking the rules, we're going to get done what we need to get done. And it was really nice to kind of hear those stories of collaboration. And again, pairing that with what they are finding with parents and kind of going from this adversarial way that Sasha said to this collaborative framework that they've had before. They all talked about their anxieties over data and assessment, and how do you collect IEP data? How do you collect things? In Virginia, we have the VAP. How do you collect things with fidelity and validity? And we've talked about that a lot in my classes this semester, and there really is no right answer for that right now, but they struggled and stressed about that a lot. They have all said this is the hardest they have ever worked. Every single teacher that we talked to have said this semester during this school year that they would quit. They will quit. They, at some point, I don't know where that breaking point will be, but they have said at they're hitting this breaking point, and some of them are like, I don't want to go back next term after winter break. Some of them are like, I can't do this if we do this next year, but they are all under incredible amounts of stress. And then we kind of talked about the technology. The technology is challenged because this is not a population that is used to going on, Google Classroom and doing all these, interactive activities, Kahoot and those things. We don't necessarily do that with this population. So it's really challenged us to see what these students can do. And one of the good quotes that the teacher said, she's like, I am so, because she was so stressed, she's like, I am so conflicted that my students did so well. She goes, I know that sounds horrible. She goes, but I was so stressed, because not that she wanted them to fail, but she wanted to continue to show administration, look, this is not working. But in terms of her students, it was working. So it's really showing us what our students are capable of. So on the kind of the plus side here, we got the collaboration, the autonomy they have found, the things that they can do. And really thinking kind of outside the box of the kind of the activities and things that they can do with students, but recognizing that there are some limitations with the distance ed model of the kinds of things that we can do and get assessment data and things for our students. Anything else, team?
Thank you. No, I just, one thing that we are finding, and we're hearing it directly from the participants, is that a lot of these challenges, and again, everyone that's on here knows, a lot of these challenges, there isn't a solution, or there isn't an easy or clear-cut solution. However, it's been nice and hopeful, and gives us hope to see all of these temporary or working towards solutions that these teachers are coming up with. And it makes me a little bit miss the classroom when I'm hearing some of these stories, although my hat's off to all of the teachers who are doing this day in and day out. Even though I'm hearing exactly how it is, I still can't imagine how it is. But I don't want to move my screen in terms of Q&A. Should we answer any right now, Frankie, or should we?
Sure, I've kind of been typing a little bit
Okay.
with litter full of typos, sorry, everyone. But I don't know if we touched on this too, but I think for me, one of the really encouraging things was like the organic development, even though it was kind of like a forced, horrible situation, but the organic development of family professional partnerships that have benefited families, the students with disabilities, and the teachers. Like that is what it, in our preliminary analysis, has really moved things forward amid this time of crisis and COVID and uncertainty. So that's been really encouraging. Also, something that's been really encouraging for me personally is one or two teachers in particular, or I'm sorry, participants in particular, I was really disheartened in the first interview. Sasha and I co-interviewed one, and I think I ended up crying, which I'm not a big crier. And it was just a really disheartening interview. I wanted to grab the kids and grab the families and grab her. It just was not great teaching. Really, really non-inclusive, apathetic teaching. And it hurt. And talked to her in the summer and it hurt. And talked to her, I mean, yeah. Anyway, as a direct result of her having to rise to the challenge and her deciding to rise to the challenge, her interview in just recently in October was, this is the best thing that ever happened to me as an instructor, COVID, because she is such a better teacher. I mean, she just went on and on about everything she's learned and how she partners with families instead of fighting with families and feeling judged by them. And now she understands she was not a really, dedicated teacher before, and how much she misses her students. And that's the hardest part. And she aches. And it just was like this is why we do this. Like it grounded everyone in a way. So it was just inspiring is definitely not the word I want to use because gross, but like more like, hell yeah, like make the best out of this. Like, let's do something about this. So it was pretty awesome. Some questions I answered regarding Q&A was conversations around equity, talking about tensions between any sons and daughters who have disabilities and those who don't. I responded that a lot of the siblings reported, right, also stayed home and assisted their siblings with disabilities. Anything to add to that, team?
I know in one of our interviews, a participant did talk about there was tension between other families. So their family, because they had a child with a significant disability, had access to in-person learning, but the other family did not. And they did not understand why a child with a more significant disability could go over their general education student. So that was another interesting thing that we discussed about.
You're muted, Frankie.
Thanks, man, I did it. Oftentimes parents, Serena noted, of child or children are on the same page or not on the same page. I did the same thing, Serena. Another question was the difference in conversations between students who were included and not included. Most of the students were in self-contained settings, especially during this time with really severe complex support needs. But for those who weren't, I mentioned about co-teaching and that essentially ending, or community-based instruction just gone. So essentially now everyone is in a self-contained, non-inclusive setting. If you have anything to add to that, team.
No, that was definitely we asked like Rose and Thorn, which we are going to hopefully ask the audience here in a few minutes too. But one of the bigger concerns was that where is inclusion minutes coming from? When is inclusion happening, right? no one is together. And so it depended on the grade level. It depended on the makeup of the school and the classroom that the student came from, or that the teacher was coming from. But one of the high school teachers who has been working very hard to have an inclusive social science history class as an elective for her high schoolers. It's seniors, and so seniors at the end of May are totally checked out, and were very not regularly general education seniors were not logging in to access this course it just happened to not be a graduation requirement. So the ones who were coming were the students in the special education class. Now typically they go into the physical classroom together, but going online, the teacher felt like it was a failure, but I think the fact that her students were still logging in, trying to get that content and see that other general education teacher still was a little bit of a success.
Yeah, there were numerous co-teaching examples like that. Another comment from Lynn is that her son's roommate is in a post-secondary transition program. So I'm wondering, Lynn, if you mean like in a college-based setting. So right now they're finding that basically the student is zoning out during instruction, and the direct support provider is, doing it for them. So there's just really no value. And I paraphrase that. So it's written in the Q&A if I got that wrong, but we definitely heard a lot about that. I haven't responded yet, but I think there was a shift to much more engagement from the students as time went on. So I don't know if anyone wants to speak to that. Sorry, I keep calling you team too. That's really weird.
Just letting you guys know, I think we have about a 5-minute warning from our moderator, so I'm not sure.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Do we have anything else to add to our wrap up?
I will say, for as many of these kids, like they can't focus, they can't get online. The screen is setting them off. A lot of those conversations we did have, maybe not equal, but definitely not a significantly less amount of, wow, like he is blossoming online. Like this routine or this short
behaviors are mitigated from being in this environment. Comments like that too.
Yeah. But certainly a lot of zoning out. And I've personally found that for myself in this environment. Any other ones?
Gail noted quickly that for the students who are bringing back students with significant needs, so the similar is happening with the sample which we spoke to. They're now using some type of in-person time at school to do synchronous instruction with grade level general education students to have inclusive opportunities. So again, I think that that's like a really cool example of like let's dismantle oppressive and non-inclusive settings and make something new. Like this is an opportunity. There's nothing like this has ever happened before. From now on, we know that online instruction is possible. So if there's any more tragedies or crises as a country, as a world, we will continue to educate. So what an awesome opportunity to do it better.
I agree. With that, I was gonna invite, and it sounds like some of you have already shared that in the chat and or Q&A box, but just kind of reflect back, what has been your rose and thorn? If there's anything really like you're excited to share. This is TASH. We want to hear from you and talk, not lecture. So we wanted to end with that, as well as kind of just so what does this mean for you as a teacher, as a parent, as an administrator? And again, if you wanted to share any kind of thoughts, hopes, fears, rose or thorn in the chat, just with our last couple of minutes here, we'd love for it just to be a discussion. I know we have to facilitate it through the chat, but we'd love for it to be as close to a discussion as possible.
So this is like what happens in online classrooms.
Oh yeah, I can see it. So if there's no one, then also thank you for joining. And we'd be happy to share any other information offline. I know this PowerPoint will be logged in the TASH archives.
Oh, Andrea, we could end with one more if we have time. Andrea noted that she works in a rural school district that is doing in person right now. Whoa. And one of their responses to the pandemic has been to restrict students' movement between classes. Oh, and there's a Rose spending time with my daughter. Yes, right? Which at first was a thorn for me, to be honest. But yeah, it's that reframing, recreating. What can we do with this? Viewing it as that opportunity. Sasha's like, don't preach. And I'm like, preach.
I think there's another one in the chat, Frankie. Did you see that from Jen? A few of them.
Yeah, sorry. So cool. So Jen, a grad student, is doing her fieldwork at an inclusive school right now. And one of your students has grown so much. Like, that's amazing, right? Seeing in spite of, right? Like that shows if anything doesn't say inclusion is worthwhile, like in spite of everything that's going on, yeah, we still have growth. We're still moving.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone. I think we might have 3 minutes, or maybe we're over.
Nope, you have about 3 minutes left.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Joanne. I was afraid to move my screen. So if there's any other questions, in terms of like the research process, we followed some semi-structured protocols for our interviews, and we are tweaking those depending on kind of as our analysis starts, and then we see where we need to shift and make changes or add to the protocol. And the 4 of us split the interviews, and the 4 of us read and code and analyze, and it's been really, really fascinating, and it's kind of just beginning.
Yeah, Jen just mentioned how it's really important to hear the teachers' perspectives. And, you know, for us, that is exactly why we did and are doing what we are doing. Sometimes it's hard to hear the teachers' perspectives among all of the other difficulties with distance learning.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say, when we were first kind of thinking about like what can we do, what could we learn during this time, we were really interested in hearing from families, and it shifted to teachers. One, because all of us were or are special education teachers, but we were very cognizant and thoughtful about the added burden of asking a family and a student to talk about this huge monumental shift in their daily lives, especially if it's not a positive one, which for a lot of people it wasn't back in March.
Rhonda asked about individualized distance plans. If we had like 55 more hours, like honestly, feel free to contact us though. That was a huge thing to discuss. And bottom line, I don't know if any of you all want to take, you all shake your head, no. Bottom line, not a thing, not compliant, and still changing daily. So yeah, I don't know if you have any more to add, but yeah, it's a huge issue that, again, an opportunity for reauthorization of IDA to make IEPs more relevant, more flexible, more, in line with the spirit of the law, as well as the letter of the law, and truly reflect individuals with disabilities as well as their entire support systems, so that they graduate ready, more equipped to rock and roll.
On that ever
Well-
so positive note, I want to thank everyone for a wonderful presentation. We have reached the end of our session time, and we need to bring our session to a close to prepare for our next session. Thanks again. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your conference experience.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Take care.